Hi, Amy. Thanks for joining me today.
You're welcome.
How are you feeling?
Yeah, good, thank you. Yeah, just I'm actually tired at the moment myself because I'm 25 weeks pregnant. So sleep has been a bit sort of hit and miss, really sleeping really lightly and obviously popping out a number of times in the night to use the loo and things like that. So I can't even blame my daughter. It's not her fault. It's other things keeping me up. So
there's so much going on in pregnancy, isn't it? Everything just needs to rebalance itself. The reason why we're having this conversation today is because I met you not too long ago in Winchester at an event, and I had that feeling of, gosh, I wish I'd known you 4 years ago. And that is because my son is 4 years old, and you are someone who helps parents to create a structure and routine around sleep so that their children can have good quality sleep, and so the parents can have more energy themselves. But rather than me introducing you to anyone who might be interested, could you tell me a little, or tell us a little bit more about yourself and who is it that you work with?
Sure. So I'm a certified baby and child sleep coach, and I also support the parents of children with autism and ADHD as well. So I'm trained in both areas. I decided to become a sleep coach because when my daughter was younger, her sleep was very, very poor. She didn't sleep well. She had really bad reflux when she was a baby. So she was uncomfortable. She didn't enjoy sleeping on her back because she was constantly bringing up her milk and being sick a lot. But because of that, her sleep was just awful. And my husband and I ended up on 2-hour shifts through the night, tag teaming it. So, a 2-hour run would be the maximum amount of sleep in one go that we'd be getting. And we were absolutely exhausted. And I just spent hours of my life questioning so much around sleep and wanting to know the answers to so many things that I didn't know. My mum actually bought me a book written by a sleep consultant around how you can support your child to sleep train, implementing good routines around sleep. And I followed a lot of those methods and sleep trained my daughter when she was about 6-7 months old, and she was sleeping through the night within about 2 weeks. Ooh. And it revolutionized our lives, because I think when you're living in a mist of sleep deprivation, you almost adjust to it in a weird way, like life, squabbling with your husband, being irritable, feeling stressed, feeling, so easy to snap and things like that just become normal. And you come out of that and you realize how low you were when you were in that. And I don't want other parents to go through that unnecessarily, because my ethos is parents don't need to be sleep deprived. Maybe in the very early days of a tiny little newborn baby, yes, perhaps. But beyond that, there isn't a need for sleep deprivation. Tiredness, yeah, we're all tired. We're parents, we're running around after toddlers, or babies or older children, whatever. Parenting is tiring, but sleep deprivation is a whole other level. And I want to support families to enable them to come out of that and just be normal tired parents, not sleep deprived parents.
Amazing, yes. And there's so many health consequences to being sleep deprived, even for short periods of time, right? And I do see that presenting in the people that I work with on a one-to-one basis or in my programs. Most of them are parents that have gone through a level of it, but sometimes, the sleep deprivation can also happen to people that don't have children as well. However, things like depression is very much linked with sleep deprivation these days. Diabetes type 2 can be linked to that, all sorts of inflammations, allergies in the body. So being tired, like you said, is one thing, but actually being exhausted and sleep deprived is something else. So it's wonderful that people these days can access services like the ones you offer. I think it's just everyone should know about it. I do work with quite a lot of parents who come mostly for my one-to-one energy focus program. So I thought I would love to pick your brain on some of the strategies that maybe parents could use alongside changing their nutritional habits that would help them to get a better quality sleep. Mm-hmm. So one of the things I've been asked quite a lot, or we have a conversation about, is how can parents create, what sort of habits they can create to help the children fall asleep easier. Because one thing that I feel lots of people experience is that evening time is sort of the end of the day, everyone is tired, everyone is hungry, and then the children start behaving differently. They become a bit more challenging. And I think the parents are sometimes frustrated with it, but maybe you will tell us that actually the child is already in a state that can be prevented. So tell us more about how can we help our children fall asleep easier without having to fight and, you know, and do all the things we do.
Yeah, and bedtime, it can be a challenge, especially for older children that just don't want to go to sleep because of FOMO or various other things. But there are definitely simple things that you can put in place to try and prevent that as much as possible. And that's why I get a little bit frustrated when you hear people say, especially older generations, oh, it's just witching hour. And it's like, well, no, technically there shouldn't be like a really strong witching hour. Yes, towards the end of the day, we're a bit tireder, we might be a little bit more likely to feel a little bit more irritable, something like that. But it's, you know, it's just small changes. If your child is melting down, crying at every tiny little thing, throwing tantrums, you know, that's suggesting that perhaps they're overtired, okay? And then that's when those problems start to occur. So there are ways that, yeah, you can definitely hopefully prevent that. But also it's a little bit about, similar to the stuff you talk about with letting your brain know that food is coming. It's the same with sleep, letting your brain know that sleep is coming. And one of the best ways to do that is building a really simple, consistent routine. And it might sound a bit obvious, but actually, if you stick with a consistent routine every single day to pretty much roughly the same time, so setting a bedtime for your child, that is going to be one of the best ways to get your child ready for bed subconsciously as well as consciously. And it all can start actually at the beginning of the day when we first wake up. So exposing little ones to sunlight early on in the day helps set that circadian rhythm, which is our internal body clock, which everything is sort of run by inside us internally. And our brain tells our body to release certain hormones throughout the day, depending on what might be going on. And you've probably all heard of a hormone called melatonin, which is a sleepy hormone. It's what we all kind of need to start to feel sleepy. And that can be triggered naturally by sunlight and darkness, but there are things we can do to help it along. And that might help with little ones' routines, because if you're helping promote that melatonin, you're possibly helping your little ones start feeling sleepier than they are already. So I would definitely say building in a consistent routine. So however that looks for you, that might vary for many different people depending on what their child responds well to. But whatever you do, just keep it calm. Ideally all in the child's sleep space, obviously other than a bath. If you're going to have a bath, then the bedtime routine essentially starts after the bath in the child's sleep space. And you start that at pretty much roughly the same time every day. If you have a very, very young baby who's on multiple naps and you're sort of guiding your day around wake windows, which are the periods of time between sleep, bedtime might shift a little bit each day depending on the naps, and that's okay, that's fine. But as your child drops down to 2 naps and then beyond that, I would be setting bedtime at the same time every day. And that will help your little one know that sleep is coming, and it really helps. And that's actually a really good tip for adults as well. We should also be going to bed at the same time every day, but we probably don't as adults because life just gets in the way. So setting a consistent routine, starting bedtime at the same time with the aim for little one to be asleep at the same time every day. And then in terms of that sort of that behavior towards the end of the day, if you're seeing your child really having meltdowns and really resisting bedtime, there could be overtiredness at play as well. So the best thing to do with that is just look across the board and just ask yourself, is my little one getting enough sleep? If they still nap, are they having sufficient day sleep? And is day sleep happening at the right time? And I can sort of give you information about ways that you can find that out, maybe towards the end of the chat. And also, how are they sleeping at night? Are they getting enough sleep at night? Because poor night sleep then impacts on day sleep, and then day sleep impacts on night sleep. So I think the simplest thing to start with is your routine. get that in place, because you can do that irrelevant of whether you think your little one's getting enough sleep or not. And it doesn't have to be long, 20 minutes to half an hour in the bedroom. And that can include stories. It can include, if you've got an older child that actually, you know, they've got a puzzle in front of them, or, you know, there's little clicky magnets or something that just helps them focus and calm down. That can be part of the routine as well. It doesn't have to be lullabies and things like that. If you've got a smaller baby, then you might want to have lullabies. You might want to still read a baby a story, even though you might think they can't, well, they're not going to understand, but actually just hearing your voice reading a soothing story is like quite a nice thing to do at the end of the day as well. And it's really nice bonding time too. And then just as one final point, I would also say just to be conscious of what your little ones are eating at dinner time as well. If you're finding the little ones are sort of feeling quite hyper, seeming quite hyper after dinner, have they had a dinner or a pudding that's high in sugar? And obviously it's more your area than mine, but there are certain foods that can actually help with the release of melatonin. So things like poultry, chicken and turkey, pulses and fish can also help with melatonin release, and then banana and yogurt and things like that as well, so low sugar yogurt. So thinking about the foods that little one might be having, and you could simply Google foods that help me feel sleepy, and a list will come up on Google. It's that easy. So combine all of that together and hopefully you'll find bedtime might become a little bit easier.
Oh yes, amazing. I think it's probably something us as parents think about more, the routine for the baby when they're very little, the child when they're very little. But as they grow up and there's more activities going on, I think we're probably, I definitely feel I'm a bit guilty of that. Lack of routine, or being a bit more too open to changing it just because we feel like doing something else. So I'm definitely going to try that. And also very interesting, you suggested to actually do those activities in the bedroom. So I guess that's already sort of showing that we're not using living room anymore because we're going to sleep, right? So it's again another message coming into the brain and to the body that time to play is over now. We're doing something
think about it as a transition period, because I think a lot of the time we're busy, you know, kids may have come home from school or nursery, or you've come home from work, and little one might be doing something, an activity, playing downstairs, and you go, right, bedtime now, come on, let's go. And of course they're going to resist that, because they're going to be like, no, I'm in the middle of something. I want to play. So definitely giving warnings that things are coming up, like, you know, 5-minute warning, counting down, you know, 2 minutes, 1 more minute, and then you're kind of given a warning. But if you have a nice routine, it doesn't mean that playtime is over. It can just be, you know, if it's a quiet game, you could say, okay, I see you're doing that puzzle. Do you want to bring that puzzle upstairs and maybe finish it off in your room after bath time, or something like that? But if your child's obviously running around, not doing a puzzle, they're just running around in the garden playing football or something, then I think about just giving them those warnings and counting down, so they're not suddenly just told it's bedtime now, and then you might find resistance from that alone. So definitely,
getting them prepared, right? Just making them a bit more aware about what's to come. Amazing. What about parents? What could they do, or people who don't have children? How could we implement the advice you've just given us in regards to children to our own bedtime routines, so that we can promote better sleep as well?
Sure. Quite a lot of the similar stuff, really, in the sense that you want to let your body know that sleep is coming. So our bodies naturally release melatonin. If you ASD, if your child is autistic, for example, or you or yourself are autistic, then there can be irregular melatonin release. So it's not always as simplistic as that for children with autism, but that's why it's really important around the routine, because we're trying just to help trick the brain, or just convince the brain that sleep is coming if it's not happening naturally anyway. And the same for adults, either way, whether you're neurotypical or neurodiverse. Certain actions and associations tell us that sleep is coming. So for adults as well, if we have a small wind down period, that could be reading in bed, for example. It could be anything, as long as it's calming and it works for you. It could be listening to a podcast. what we want to try and avoid is things that are overstimulating right before we try to sleep. So a big no-no is checking work emails, for example, because for a long time scientists thought that simply just looking at blue light, LED blue light, sort of simulated sunlight, and then woke up our brains and told us it's time to still be awake. They're now not so sure if it's blue light that actually does that, and actually it's overstimulation of the brain. So if you were to look at your, I'm not, saying go and look at your phone before bedtime, it's still not the best sort of sleep hygiene. But if you were to look at your phone with a blue light filter on and it was pictures of a forest with leaves blowing and waterfalls going, that might help some people go to sleep. But if you look at your phone and you read a news article that gets you quite cross about something, or you check your work emails and then you're suddenly thinking about work, it's more about the content that you're viewing. So if you're overstimulating yourself right before bed, you're going to then lie awake because your brain's basically told your body to stay alert and keep going. So avoiding anything that overstimulates you would be my number one tip, as adults as well as children. For adults and children alike, a warm bath can actually really help. About 2 hours before bedtime, our core body temperature drops, and that's when melatonin starts to be released. And having a warm bath can actually help with that, because when we warm our hands and feet, it actually helps to lower our core body temperature. So that's why some people that with insomnia might find that wearing socks to bed helps. That in itself is not going to fix your sleep problems, but if you're okay with socks and you don't find that irritating, because some people don't like to sleep in socks, then things like that could help. And then just reading with a low light or a reading light, something again that's not too stimulating before going to bed. Reading's a really nice way to help yourself relax. And then just giving yourself time to fall asleep. As adults, we need really a minimum of around 7 hours sleep a night. That's ideal. So if you go to bed and don't allow yourself enough time to fall asleep, you're cutting short your sleep time, if that makes sense.
Sure.
So allowing time to perhaps lie awake for 10-15 minutes or whatever that might look like is absolutely fine. So bringing bedtime forward just a little bit to allow you that time, so you're not losing that as part of your routine, is also quite a good tip. And as with children, setting your bedtime, if it's possible, ideally setting your wake time and your bedtime. So if you're an adult and you can set your alarm for the same time every day, that's better. If you're retired and you don't have a job to go to, then actually setting an alarm is still better than waking naturally, because you're setting your circadian rhythm essentially for the day, even though that might feel a bit frustrating. But you can pick a time that you're happy with, and then going to bed roughly around the same time every night as well. It all just helps induce sleep onset, i.e. the process of falling asleep quicker, and then hopefully sleeping better through the night as well.
Amazing. I think when I work with clients on that energy program, we often have those debates around, but there's so much to do, and evening is my only time when I can actually sit down and do something for myself. But then we also talk about the pros and cons, and like seeing it as a bit more of a long-term investment. That yes, it may feel like that. You're cutting down your half an hour that you had to yourself after work and after children are in bed, and this is your cherished me time. But actually the consequences, you then really struggle to fall asleep, or you wake up several times during the night, and then the next day you feel so tired and so irritated and just not the best of you. Then actually I sometimes ask clients to think about what do you value more? Is that the half an hour of scrolling through your phone, or is it the feeling of waking up feeling ready and refreshed and sort of full of energy for the day ahead? And I know it's not as simple as that, but with sometimes with ongoing sleep problems, the long-term goal and the long-term reward is to just feel more energetic in yourself, and then hopefully that's going to make up for that sort of lost time of me time. Yeah.
sure. And good sleep breeds good sleep as well. Not necessarily more sleep breeds more sleep, because sleep has to be at the right time. If you start becoming quite imbalanced with your sleep, that could actually be a negative thing. So if you were napping really late in the day, that's going to impact your night sleep. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas good sleep, if you're sleeping well, you'll encourage better sleep generally, especially with children. Children that are well rested are less likely to have other sleep issues, because when you're excessively tired, same with adults as well, that can then mean that you experience sleep issues. So for example, things like sleep terrors can happen you're more likely to happen to adults and children that are sleep deprived. So it's just thinking about a good sleep, reading good sleep. And like you say, if you've slept well, then you just feel ready when you wake up that next morning. You feel ready to take on challenges in the day. You feel ready to go to work and, you know, deal with whatever it is that you've got to deal with at work. And I'm not saying it makes people perfect, but it just makes things so much easier to cope with. Whereas when you're sleep deprived, yeah, everything is harder.
And I think that's one of the frustrations that mums of young children have, that they just don't feel themselves anymore because of that sleep deprivation. Yeah. Their reaction to things is so much more aggravated and different to what it would be like if they were a bit better, if they were well slept and sort of well fed at the same time, because those are two elements that often go to the bottom of the list, right? So
we neglect ourselves.
Helping your child to sleep better may mean you will have better quality sleep, and then you will just feel a better mum the next day, or a better dad.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. So just finishing off our conversation, you did say a little bit about naps and napping for parents as well, or for adults in general. What's your general advice for people who feel that need to take a nap in the day? Are you pro? Are you against? Or is there a form of nap that is more beneficial than another?
Sure. Napping is really good for us as adults as well. There's a lot of scientific research to show that naps have a huge benefit. But there are sort of caveats to that. If you're going to nap in the day, you really ideally want it to be short, 30 minutes, ideally 20 minutes, but no more than 30. What happens if you go for longer than 30 is you're more likely to then go into deep sleep. And when you're woken from deep sleep, you wake up feeling groggy. You don't feel particularly energized. Think of it as like in the middle of the night, if your baby starts crying and you sort of wake up and you're like, oh, what on earth is going on? And you're sort of zombie like walking to their room. That's because you've probably been woken from a deep sleep. So for a nap, what you want it to be is short. So it's predominantly light sleep or REM sleep, which is where you might dream. But if you stay in light sleep for your nap, you will then wake up more energized, because you are not in such a deep state of sleep anyway, so you are easier to wake. And that's been shown to actually give adults an energy boost. Children are different, because invariably children need longer than 20-minute nap, because their sleep needs are different, because you're trying to squeeze in, you know, for some very young babies, 16 hours worth of sleep across a day. So it's all different. But for adults, a 20-minute power nap, absolutely no later than 3 p.m. You don't really want to be sleeping past 3 p.m. because then you might start to find that impacts on your night sleep and getting to sleep later. But we are actually designed as humans to nap. Evolutionary wise, we used to nap, we were supposed to nap, and communities around the world that still have siestas and things like that have been shown to have really positive health benefits from napping in the day. So yeah, it's definitely a good thing. And I think now a lot of businesses around the world, maybe slightly more progressive, wealthier businesses that fit sleep pods in and things like that into their offices, are promoting sleep, short power naps to employees, because they've seen the benefits of it. And there have been various psychologists and scientists through the years who have deliberately napped in order to get ideas, because when we sleep, even in light sleep, our brains are functioning and working, and sometimes we're processing things. So sometimes you might have found you're struggling with a problem when you go to sleep, and you might find yourself randomly waking in the night or first thing in the morning and go, oh, I know what to do now, or things like that, because your brain is working while you're sleeping. It's amazing what goes on while you sleep. So yeah, having a short nap in the day can help to energize and motivate. Just don't let it get longer than half an hour, because then, unless, for example, you're sick, unwell or something like that, and you need to have a longer sleep to catch up on sleep that you lost in the night, although technically you can't catch up on sleep, but top up, that's a bit different. But on average, yeah, a short power nap. And quite often a good time to think about that is our bodies naturally dip in energy around 2 p.m. And that's when our ancestors would have sort of slept, so to speak, or had their naps. And that's quite a key point where people tend to want to reach for sugary foods as well, because of the energy dip. And actually what our body's looking for is a power nap. So there's, yeah, loads of benefits to napping if you can. I know lots of people struggle to nap. I have over the years. I've never been someone that's been able to just shut off and nap. I wish I could. But for those people that do, there's definite pros to it.
Amazing. I love it that you've also brought it together with the fact that the blood sugar levels are falling down. It's usually after lunch. We've had a meal. Our bodies have been using the energy. They're distributing it across the body, and the blood sugar levels fall down. And that's, like you say, we tend to have cravings, because naturally or primarily we want to lift those glucose levels up again, so we can feel a bit more energetic. But if we were to swap a chocolate bar for a 20-minute nap, I think that would just change the world completely, and how we feel long term, right? One thing I'd say is I do actually have a very close friend who's got a 5-month-old baby, and she's unable to nap. She just can't do it. Even when she's very sleep deprived, she would still not fall asleep. But we actually found that for her, listening to some meditations or doing some breath work with the eyes closed is actually lifting her energy levels as well. So maybe that could be used as well, literally just to allow our bodies and our brains to switch off for 15-20 minutes, close our eyes so there's no more cues coming from the outside world, and just use that time to maybe take a couple of deep breaths and oxygenate our body. So we're always short on oxygen as well. We don't necessarily breathe very well. So yeah, maybe that could be an alternative to those who can't.
There's huge benefits to breathing well. It sounds so silly because we just do it inherently, right? Innately, we just breathe. But actually you can breathe well and not breathe well, in the same way you can sleep and not sleep well. So just because your eyes are closed when you're sleeping, it doesn't mean you're sleeping well. It doesn't mean you're having restorative sleep. But yeah, for mums especially, I was one of them. My husband was like, why don't you just nap? I'm like, I can't fall asleep. And I think there's probably a little bit around when you are very tired, that your brain sometimes is in overdrive because your body's essentially telling you to keep going. People that are sleep deprived tend to have higher levels of cortisol, which is the hormone often talked about in terms of stress, but it also is there to help us stay alert, to keep us going, the fight or flight sort of syndrome. But if you're a mum that can't nap, then yeah, just finding ways that you can just rest, just putting your feet up, stopping. And yeah, if you can, something mindful is even better than just sort of mindlessly scrolling on your phone. But if that's what you enjoy and that helps you to relax, then there's nothing wrong with that. But if it makes you more anxious when you're scrolling and looking at things on social media, then don't do that. Just find something that works for you to help you feel calm, and just do that for 20 minutes, half an hour if you can.
Yeah, I'm just going to add that actually drinking coffee can raise cortisol levels even more. So if you're sleep deprived, the nudge and the natural reaction is to start the day with the coffee. But I would really encourage everyone to try not to have a meal first and then maybe that coffee later, so that the cortisol levels are not sort of skyrocketing through the roof as much as they are when you drink coffee first thing in the morning on an empty stomach. So yeah.
And I have a rule myself of no caffeine after midday, which I know that other people might be like, oh, for goodness sake, but your body can sometimes take up to about 16 hours to rid itself of caffeine. So if you have a coffee at say 4 p.m, your body's processing that sometime in the night, and that's going to wake you up. So really thinking about your caffeine and alcohol intake. So actually just going back to your first question around how can parents sleep better and get to sleep better, not drinking caffeine and alcohol too late in the day. Obviously, you go to a birthday party and you want to have a few glasses of wine. I'm not saying, you know, your life has to stop, but really thinking about how regularly you're drinking alcohol in the evenings. If you're the kind of person that actually likes a glass of wine to relax every evening or every other evening, but you're finding your sleep is disturbed, are there other things that you could substitute that for, such as non-alcoholic spirits, that you can make really nice cocktails or non-alcoholic gins, or I think there's been a real improvement lately in non-alcoholic wines as well.
Yeah.
So I know a lot of people go, I don't like the thought, I don't like them, they're not as nice, and they aren't, I do agree. But sometimes I find, for me, it's almost about the process of having a glass in my hand and feeling the associations that come with that. Or swapping to caffeine-free tea like red bush tea, rooibos tea, and things like that, which you can still have with milk, and it feels and tastes very similar to normal tea with a slight difference in flavour. But you could have a nice cup of tea in the evening and not be then interrupting your sleep.
Amazing, thank you. I appreciate you've mentioned this as well, because it's a big contributor to people's sleep issues, caffeine and alcohol. Amazing. So Amy, you did say at the very beginning that you could tell us a little bit more about how to find out how much sleep your child should have, or you know, how long they should sleep for. Where could we get that information from?
Sure. So if you just go to my website, so if you simply put into Google Amy Crichton, or even Amy Baby Sleep Coach or Amy Crichton Baby Sleep Coach, some variation of those words, my website should pop up. And on my website, on the homepage, if you just scroll down a little bit, there's a link to, well, a sign-up form that you can then download my sleep needs chart. And that shows parents an average across age. So don't panic if you look at the chart and go, oh my goodness, my child is way off this. It's not to scare people, it's kind of just to give you something to aim for. If you think your little one is way below the requirements of their age, then get in touch. I'll be happy to have a chat with you, and I can tell you about ways that I could support you to get them up to that. But what it will help you do is just get an idea of how much sleep your child needs in a 24-hour period. And that includes naps as well. It includes nap durations and wake windows, because as I mentioned before, sleep is all about balance. It's not about going, okay, my child needs 12 hours of sleep in a 24-hour period, I'm going to give them 6 HIIT a day and 6 at night. It doesn't work like that. It has to be balanced in the right way. So the chart just shows parents how they can do that, and it just gives you a little bit of guidance around that.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you for that. So yeah, anyone that needs a little bit more guidance, head over to Amy Baby Sleep Coach website. How else can you support parents? What other services do you offer?
So my services are predominantly at the moment one-on-one services, so supporting parents directly with children who have sleep issues. So that can range from simple advice through to sleep training. And I think there's a lot of misconceptions around sleep training. People hear those words and think, oh, you're going to ask me to let my baby cry it out. And it's not about that these days. They were very traditional methods that were used back in the day, but now we know a lot more about children, about sleep, and about ways that we can gently support them. So sleep training can be really gentle, it can be responsive, and it can be very, very patient. And I only use gentle methods, I don't use cry it out. And I've also just started developing my new series of handbooks as well, which are only going to be £12.95 each. So, you know, they're not very expensive. So if you're like just not sure if working with a sleep consultant is the right way to go for you, but you'd like to try a few little tips and techniques, and maybe starting with a handbook first could be a good way to sort of lower yourself in. Or simply if you're like, no, I've had enough, we need to sort these sleep issues now, then, you know, you can jump straight in and book a free discovery call and we can have a chat.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for the wealth of information you shared with me today. Hopefully the people that are watching this will find it very helpful and informative, and you've given me quite a few nudges I can sort of incorporate into my one-to-one energy plan program. So thank you so much for your time, and yeah, I hope to see you soon.
Thank you, Emilia.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.